Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. I wear the same weary look, I think, as many of those I saw, many Spurs fans on the flight back from Amsterdam to Stansted this afternoon, which no doubt bore the same look of many of those who flew back wherever they flew back from, wherever they flew to. And today, I don't think you would have got any late night ones last night, but certainly this morning. They were not the faces of people that had a great time in the Netherlands. I mean, I'm sure some managed to around the match, but certainly the game itself, we all wore that familiar kind of expression of flying back from a European Tottenham game this season. There have been so many disappointing performances. This probably the worst of the bunch. It was absolutely dreadful. And I always feel so sorry for the fans because, look, this is my job. I've got to do it. I've got to go out there. You get many great nights where you're incredibly privileged to do this. There are nights like last night which are not so great, but you've still got to report on it. And let's be honest, I'm getting paid to go and watch that. I feel so sorry for the people that shell out hundreds, if not thousands, on these trips to go and do these things. And I see so many familiar faces, see many new ones that come up and introduce themselves, and they're always so lovely and so pleasant. It just makes me feel even more sorry for them that they're subjected to Tottenham Hotspur. It really does. They just deserve so much better. They really do. This was dreadful. Oh, it was so dismal. It was as bad a night for Ange Postecoglou as it was for Tottenham Hotspur, to be honest. And I think he knew it because you could kind of see, even at the end of the game, there's 950 travelling Spurs fans, most of them up in the corner. I think that some of them have got the slightly more expensive seats in front of us, which actually contained a lot of the players' families as well. But mostly they're up in the corner. And when the players went over to applaud their efforts, Postecoglou just kind of hung back at the back of it all. He was there, he was applauding, but he was at the back. And I think he just knew inside that his team had served up utter dross for those fans that had shelled out their hard-earned money to go and watch that. And it's just unacceptable. It is. Even in the press conference afterwards, there was you could tell there was very little he could actually say. And I think that's because the long list of reasons, some his critics would say excuses, for many of the club's struggles this season, they'd gone. They weren't there on Thursday night. There was no excuse. There was no reason for it. And that's what probably makes it even more frustrating for me than any of the previous European nights away this season. Spurs had 8 days to recharge and prepare every little tactical detail for this game. Everything they needed to prepare, they had the time to do it. The players even had a couple of days off to do whatever they wanted to do. Everything was included in this 8 days. And Postecoglou on the night, probably the strongest squad he's had in months. I mean, we looked at the team and we were like, okay, that should be enough to do the job. And he looked at the bench and like, wow, that's the strongest bench Spurs have had that I can remember. You know, Van der Ven, Romero, Solanke, Basuma, Sarr, Moore, all of these kind of players on there. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some really obvious as well. Dane Scarlett on there too. Pedro Porro, of course, as well. The more I name, the more disrespectful it comes to the people I forget. That's why people often don't kind of just list names like a muppet, like I just was. But yeah, all of that. It was a squad that was more than capable of doing the job on the night. Yeah, it didn't. It didn't. And there was no little irony for me to the fact that Troy Parrot was out there on the pitch. I wouldn't even say he was RZ's best player, but he was better than every single person, maybe barring Vicario on the pitch. Better than every Spurs player on the pitch. And there's no little irony to that. This is a guy that kind of got jettisoned by Spurs in the summer. He said, we caught his press conference actually ahead of the game, asked him a few questions, and he kind of admitted that there were no words said to him. He didn't have a chat with Postecoglou. Just everyone kind of knew it was his time to move on. He had no issues with that. He said he's got no regrets. Why would he? He's kind of, He scored 17 goals this season for RZ Alkmaar. I've always told you not supposed to say RZ and Alkmaar because technically the R in RZ is Alkmaar. I'll just call him RZ, it's easier. So anyway, 17 goals. He's had a great season. He is loving life in the Netherlands. It's his second season in the Netherlands, first at RZ. And he's just loving it. And why would he have any regrets over leaving a club where he wasn't playing? And like I said last night, better than any outfield player probably for Spurs on the night. It just caused them so many problems with his movement, use of the ball, his hold-up play. He's got a great radar. All of the stuff that I used to kind of watch him do for the under-21s and in the little glimpses for the first team. We didn't see much of him, but mostly under-21s. I'm so kind of happy for him. He's taken it to another level and you can see it in his play. But this kind of player who I think Spurs still have, I can't remember the fee now, it might be 25% sell-on clause. I can't remember. It's not a lot. Well, it is if you sell for big money. But there's this player who was sold for relatively cheap, relatively nothing comparatively. And in the Spurs side, you've got 5 expensive attackers just failing to even lay a glove on RZ. And it kind of said everything for me, watching that weird kind of paradox of the player they'd let go be better than everything they had. And again, like I said at the top of this was another night in Europe where Spurs looked like a deer in the floodlights. I'm not going to say headlights because it was floodlights. They just look homesick when they travel abroad. It's only a 40-minute flight. It's not even that far away. It's almost like make a bit of noise, change it, have a different time, have a time difference in there, and they're just like, we don't know what to do. And it's just mad. There's experienced players in there. There are players that have played in these competitions before. Yeah, there's some young players in there too, but there's enough experience to guide them through that, and they just don't. This has happened so many times. They laboured to the win at Ferencváros. They were ripped apart in Galatasaray. They was lucky kind of got a couple back in the second half. Outfought for long periods in Glasgow. That's not even that far away. It's probably a similar flight to Glasgow as it is to Amsterdam, to then go on to Alkmaar. I should say, the reason I keep saying Amsterdam, for those who didn't do the trip, is it was easier just to stay in Amsterdam. It was a half an hour train to Alkmaar. So I'm not getting confused. I'm not thinking they played Ajax. There is a reason behind it. So dreadful for long periods and outfought by Rangers, who were struggling themselves at the time. Almost threw it away at Hoffenheim after a bright start as well. They just, something about a bit of noise scares them. Everything, the confidence drains, the bravery just vanishes, creativity flatlines. It's so dreadful to watch when they're not doing the things that make the system work. It is awful to watch. And that's 18 defeats now. Too many this season. Far too many for this club. And I think this probably would have been the most painful for Postecoglou, like I said, because there was no reason for it. And a lot of it fell on the players, but a lot of it fell on him as well, by just kind of, by every measure, really. There was this kind of phrase that he and the players kept using after the game, which is nowhere near the level, as if, I presume he'd said that in the changing room to them after the game. But we're all sick of hearing that phrase. We've heard it too many times this season. And it's similar to Sonny came out, and fair play for fronting up. He's the captain, I know he has to, but he came out and did some interviews, TNT Sports and the club and all this sort of stuff. And he used the expression, this had to be a wake-up call. How many times has that been said? How many wake-up calls do Tottenham need? Quite frankly, if you were there, an alarm call was constantly going off for people, you'd go over and check that person wasn't dead. If that wake-up call was going as many times as Tottenham have had a wake-up call this season, you would just probably assume they had died. And I know that's very bleak and dark to say, but it just feels like that way with Spurs. I mean, how many times can you learn a harsh lesson? Or are they even learning these harsh lessons? I mean, look, RZ have been strong at home in Europe this season. That has to be said. They've beaten every single team they've come up against at home in the competition. Roma, Galatasaray, they technically drew with Galatasaray the first time they played them, but they beat them in the knockout stages at home. Fenerbahce, Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce, they beat them at home. They beat Elfsborg. They beat Ferencváros. So they were never going to be kind of a rollover of a team. They were never going to be easy to get past. But Spurs should have done better. They went through this game with like a whimper. It was pathetic, a lot of what they were doing. The assembled attacking quality and the lack of attacking quality that they produced on the night was embarrassing. It really was. It was another night when the older heads for me, barring Vicario, went missing. I'm afraid it was Son and Maddison, captain and vice-captain, both probably among the most anonymous players on the night. The night that they needed the most, and they just weren't. I was trying to think of anything they really did. Maddison really struggled to do anything from a playmaking perspective. Sonny, I remember him cutting inside and hitting a shot over. And look, this is not to put them not to say this wasn't a widespread thing. Lots of people were dreadful last night. But they're your captains, they're your leaders, they're the players that they look to. And I know it's very easy to dismiss kind of the importance of a leader, but that's what they're there for. They're there to lead. The clue's in the title. And they just didn't. And Rodrigo Bentancur, throw him into the mix as well. I felt like he was getting back to where he needed to be, and it feels like he's had a bit of a step back in some of his recent games. Really wasn't much better at all. Picked up a third yellow, I think it is. Another yellow anyway, that means he can't play in the second leg. So that will be presumably Basuma playing in that game as well. And I wonder whether that means Basuma might start Sunday. I think he'll probably have to freshen up so much anyway. We'll talk about that later. Let's talk about this game. I'm sorry. I know you don't want to hear more about this game, but we need to kind of pick into some aspects of it. Otherwise, it's going to remain in my system. I need to get it out there. I need to have my cathartic release. Trying to think of the players that came out with any credit. Probably Vicario, because he did. We'll talk about on the pitch stuff here. We'll talk about what happened off the pitch. But he made enough saves that how the hell that game is 1-0 going into the second leg is beyond me, especially after the first half. And then probably you're looking at young players again. Bergvall, Gray, Jed Spence tried to make things happen. He was a little bit sloppy at moments, gave the ball away, but he was trying and he was getting past players. I still have this little thing at the moment where I think maybe he's better on the left than the right. I don't know why, just for some reason on the left, maybe it opens up a little bit better for him, whereas on the right, he kind of tries to stay wide and it doesn't work as much, whereas actually he works quite well as an inverted fullback. It might just be that he's kind of got used to playing on the left in this system. But yeah, just something to keep an eye on. But if you want to, you don't have to. Don't have to keep an eye on it. I didn't even think Kevin Danso played particularly well. He was a bit sloppy. I mean, he started off the game with a dreadful pass that was meant for Maddison and got nowhere near him. But I don't want to criticise him too much because I think he's come in and done so well. He gave us a really good press conference the day before the game as well. That's not to excuse him. It was just a really interesting insight into him. And he's only been there for 4 or 5 weeks now. And I do think he's given so much in that time. So I think he can get a pass. Even Bergvall, he sliced that ball into his own net and it is somehow the only goal that, splits the two teams right now. But I thought he recovered pretty well from that and tried to make things happen, tried to dribble between the lines. He went on this long dribble at one point, and I think he can't remember who he got the ball to, but he got absolutely whacked into the touchline and really looked in a lot of pain. I don't actually know how he continued after that because he looked like he was going to come off. I would say they're probably, please correct me if I'm wrong, but probably the only 4 players I can think of the starting 11 especially, that kind of come away with any credit. On Vicario, look, he is always very passionate and he's hyped up. That, I think, led to this kind of really miscalculated attempt after the final whistle to try to get the fans behind the team. I do think he messed up what kind of gesture he was trying to do it. I just think having spoken to him a couple of times, I've done one-on-one, 1on1 interview with him. Another interview, there was only 2 of us. Just getting a little insight into this guy. He's a really fascinating character. He is very driven, very ambitious, very like goalkeepers are, he is this kind of very strong character, and he believes very much in the essence of the team and never giving up. And I think that match hurt him a lot. I think it really hurt him what he was seeing in front of him more than anything. And I think as he started to go over to the fans, I don't know what was happening. I don't know whether the players were applauding the fans. He led them over there as well, to be fair. But whatever he did, I think Parrot did it a couple of weeks ago. I think he tried to do the expression as if to say, we need to come together right now, as in we need to be one. That might have made more sense, but unfortunately what he did was he did this. And I think that to 950 or so very annoyed, and rightly so, Spurs fans, after they've been served up utter tripe, they're going to take that as you need to be better, you need to give us more support, you need to be stronger in this. And understandably so, they told him to do one in no uncertain terms. And he kind of tried to do it again and then walked off. He was almost like, he just wasn't even aware of where he was. He almost walked backwards into Sonny at one point, and then he went off with like a face like thunder. I just don't think he quite realised in the moment. And look, if anyone is grounded of footballers, it's Vicario. You look at his journey, where he's come from, and everything he's had to do. I mean, yeah, I think just for a moment he forgot what all those Spurs fans have had to put into this and what they've just been given. And I think you could tell that. It started with his post-match interview. He spoke in the mix zone, and he said, what did he say? He said, I can understand the disappointment for the night because we didn't play our football. I can understand the frustration of the fans, but we still have a lot to play for, especially in the second leg. It's just a way of trying to stay together because we have the opportunity to go through to the next round. And he was asked, did you feel that they were being critical of you? And he said, they can be critical. They have to be. They must be disappointed for the game we played tonight. But we still have another game to play against RZ at our place, so it's the moment to stick together now because we can go through this round. And I was waiting for him to put something on social media because I knew he would. I knew there was no way he was going to let that go, because I think it would have stung him, not only the performance, but I think how what he was trying to do was taken. And he put on Instagram, and I think this sums it up better than anything else does. He said, as a team, we take full responsibility for our terrible performance on the pitch last night. We will work even harder to understand as a mature group what went wrong. Still, we have a great opportunity starting from Sunday to redeem ourselves and prepare in the best possible way for the second battle next Thursday. Regarding what happened at the final whistle in front of the away section, I want to clarify my intention to keep everyone as united as possible, even in the disappointment we have caused our people. If I offended anyone, I apologise to those who felt affected. Post-match emotions can be misunderstood, but I assure you that my commitment to this team and you, our fans, grows stronger day by day. Come on, you Spurs, together. I think that says it all. And, I would be stunned if anyone else has even helped him with that, because having spoken to him, that's kind of the way he talks. And like I said, I think it was just one of those misunderstandings. And I know fans are upset. I was talking to people at the Amsterdam, at the airport today, and just they were really annoyed with it. And I was trying to say, I don't think he meant it in the way of you're not doing enough for us. I think he meant it more as a stick-together thing. Obviously, I'd only seen the video at that point, so I was only kind of assuming because that they were the ones there. But yeah, I just think of all the players, it's not going to be Vicario. It's not. He gave everything in that game, and yeah, it was just really unfortunate. I mean, Postecoglou spoke about him afterwards. And he said, Vic is very, very passionate about this football club and very passionate about what we're trying to do here. And he wants to win, and he wants everyone on board with that. If people think there is one bad or vindictive bone in Vicario's makeup, then they don't know the man that I do. The guy is one of the purest human beings you've ever come across. So whatever he does for what he thinks is best for the team and for the football club, because he really cares. And he does. He genuinely does. There's a lot of people that have passed through the doors at Tottenham Hotspur that I can honestly say probably not always had the best interest of the club at heart. And Vicario is not one of those. I mean, his family are so invested as well. Like I said, we were in the press seats where the rows in front were family and friends mostly. And Vicario's parents said that they seem lovely. They seem so nice. I had a Dutch Spurs fan come over and spoke to me, and he was like, "Look at this!" And he showed me this photo of he'd had with the mum and dad, and the mum would like Vicario's mum had leant right into like cheek to cheek with his fan. I know I'm probably making too big a deal of this, but I think it just the whole family seemed so invested in it all, and it just seemed like genuinely nice people. So I did, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh no, it's like, of all the people, Vicario. And I do genuinely think there's just been a misunderstanding there. But yeah, just another unfortunate thing on the night. And it was just a night when there was so little of the football Postecoglou wants to bring to Spurs, or has been trying to bring, was on display. It wasn't brave. It wasn't relentless. There's very little movement off the ball. The movement off the ball was dreadful. There were so many times when I could see players hiding behind RZ players to not look for the ball. You know, there'd be times when, look, use an example of someone didn't, like Lucas Bergvall. Lucas Bergvall was going on sprints down the pitch and like screaming for the ball to be passed to him, and it never got to him. Whereas sometimes I saw other players just tucking in behind and making it a little bit difficult. The ball was never going to get to them. I'm not saying that they were doing that deliberately. They were hiding in that respect. I think it was more they just didn't really have the confidence in themselves, and they just instinctively were shying away from it. But that's no good. The system falls apart if all 11 players are not playing in this brave, relentless way. It is really an all or nothing setup in the system, and it's just that case. It is, and unfortunately, that's kind of could end up being what it's judged on. And I'm sorry if all or nothing gave anyone flashbacks to that documentary. I asked Postecoglou just essentially why was there such a lack of penetration from the team on the night. And he said it wasn't great from us tonight. Pretty much all facets of the game. We didn't really get to grips with any part of the game. We struggled to gain any momentum with the ball. We weren't as aggressive as we needed to be without the ball. It was a tricky surface, but having said that, we kind of knew that from yesterday. And yeah, we just didn't tackle the challenges we had out there in a really positive way. That allowed RZ to get into a rhythm, which when you're playing away from home, it's difficult to stem the tide. I don't think bringing up the surface was the greatest idea, personally. I saw what happened. I put out the series of tweets with that entire quote in it, and everyone seized on that middle section about the pitch. And I think he maybe went in a bit stronger on that potentially in his post-match interview for the TNT Sports. I think because I think I heard something about Les Ferdinand was talking about it, and it yeah. I'm sorry, but the pitch, no, just no. As he said, they knew from the training session. I'd heard some people saying that it maybe wasn't the greatest out of training session, but it's the old adage, isn't it? Both teams have to play on it. Just adapt, get on with it. But we've seen them do this before. You know, the Tamworth game, they just really, really struggled to adapt to a different surface. It was just poor. It was way more than just the pitch that was an issue here. And I asked Postecoglou, I said, like, this is such a big night. Why could the players not kind of rouse themselves for such a big occasion and give everything possible? And he said, look, it's a combination of things, but we'll analyse it and have a look at the areas where we struggled. But it's fair to say, yeah, it was nowhere near the level it needed to be. There's that phrase again, that level, nowhere near the level. But we've heard that so many times this season. After these lacklustre games that Spurs should have won, even if we're leaving aside the ones within the injury crisis, you know, there were ones around that at the start of the season as well, in that first third of the season, that had these really poor lacklustre displays that bore no relation really to probably even the match that came before it. Yeah, I mean, look, you just look at the last game Spurs played, Man City, second half, created enough chances against the champions to go and get a goal or two and maybe even win the game. Then they go to Alkmaar, and couldn't, honestly, their only shot on target probably wasn't even a shot. It was a cross, I think, from Odemir that the keeper parried away. And their keeper looked so iffy with the parry. Both George Sessions and I were sat next to each other, George Sessions from PA Sport. We both had the same thought. Why have they not tested that keeper more even from range? Look what he just did with that. He even made a mess of that. Oh dear. And look, this was a day when the players gave very little for me, a big chunk of them. but also Postecoglou just did very little to change the course of the game. Yes, there was a half-time sub, and that was a proactive move, and it was unfortunate for him that, look, the sub itself, Wilson Odobert was brought on to replace Matisse Tell. I felt sorry for Matisse Tell. He had a really thankless 45 minutes. It started off quite well. If you watch it back, there were a lot of really good touches from him in the first 5 to 10 minutes. But what he kept having to do was receive the ball, and he's getting bashed into at the back with big centre-backs. And it's not really his game. He's not kind of that kind of player that takes the ball with his back to goal and has to try and hold it up. But unfortunately, they're just having to play him there. Keep an eye out for some Matisse Tell stuff later tonight, among other stuff from Postecoglou's press conference today. He had this press conference today at 11 o'clock, which unfortunately pretty much all the regulars were not back for. But I've read about it, and I've got various bits and pieces which I can include into this as well. But yeah, I did feel sorry for Matisse Tell. He tried, he won a couple of individual duels, but on the whole, it's just not the role for him. And yeah, they got the better of him, RZ. The ball wasn't sticking. And so what he did was he brought on Odobert for him, moved Sonny into the centre. Nothing changed. Nothing changed at all. Sonny's not going to hold up the ball in that respect either. But also, Odobert offered nothing. And it was such a shame because Odebert's got this incredibly brave, exciting dribbling ability. And he could have been the man to open up the compact lines of the RZ kind of system, the very compact system they had. Didn't at all. In fact, Spurs dribbling on the whole from their attackers was pants. It was rubbish. Odobert didn't beat his man once. Son managed it once in 3 attempts. Brennan Johnson twice in 6 attempts. Tell only successful in one of his 2 dribbles as well. The people that were more successful in their dribbles had more joy. Unfortunately, were doing so in areas that didn't really hurt RZ. So Bergvall, Gray, Danso, actually, they all managed to kind of quite a few successful dribbles. But ultimately, if you're in the back end of the pitch, it's just helping you get past a couple of lines. Then it's up to those ahead of you to do something. Things needed changing. The halftime sub was a good attempt to change things, but as soon as you realise it's not working, you need to kind of swing into action again. And to wait until the 72nd minute, it was like, with so many times we're looking down thinking, his activity, no one's coming on. And it took to the 72nd minute and he brought on Solanke, Parrot and Sarr. And Spurs looked marginally more dangerous with them on. Porro's crosses caused a couple of problems. Solanke's movement was quite good. Sarr recycled the ball a lot quite quickly. And it just, if anything, it pushed RZ back up the pitch a little bit. And they kind of got stuck in their own in their own half is probably the best way to put it. So it did something. But look, even Solanke wasn't able to last the whole game. He took a big old whack from the knee of the goalkeeper, the double hyphenated Rome Jaden Owusu Aduro. There's no other way of putting this. A knee to the backside. His glute muscle absolutely smashed into the back of him. And he was in so much pain, honestly. I thought he'd done something even worse to begin with because he was down on the pitch, writhing around. This is a big guy that doesn't go down easy like that. And it's one of those where you're kind of like, help him off. They were like, he had to kind of come off and he had to walk around the pitch to come off. And it was like, he can't walk. He can't actually really put his leg down properly. And they were trying to let him do it. And then eventually someone ran around the pitch. Someone on the bench must have said, oh, go and help him, for goodness sake. So this other physio or sports science, someone came around and helped him put his arm around him and helped him down. And you kind of think, probably needed a stretcher. Just get him off the pitch kind of thing. Get him down. Don't cause any more damage because at that point you don't really know entirely what it is. I asked him after the game, Postecoglou, kind of what it was, and he said, I'm not even sure. It looks like a knock, but I haven't really seen it. Hopefully nothing too bad. Today he was asked again about it at Hotspur Way. He said, it's too early to tell. With Dom, obviously it's a knee going into the backside, so a bit sore, but it's a knock, so hopefully he'll be back pretty quickly. I know this is a bit weird, but I guess it's all eyes on Dominic Solanke's backside now, which is very strange, but you know what I mean. because Spurs need him on Sunday. They need him so badly to be fit. Yeah. Oh my goodness, they've missed him so much in the focal point role. Yeah, you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen with it. That's the problem, isn't it? It's kind of, I was going to say, it's kind of like a dead leg, but a dead butt. Let's say it's that muscle, isn't it? As long as it hasn't affected kind of any bone around there or anything, it is just a muscle that has been absolutely clattered into. I don't know whether you could get an injection there and stop the pain, and it's not risking anything by playing. I don't know, but yeah, it didn't look good. It really didn't look good at all. And yeah, they need his kind of aggression up there and his strength. And he spoke about needing aggression, and it was a night when I looked down and look. I know there's a reason for this now, but I did look down on the night and kind of think, you need Christian Romero on there. You do. You needed that aggression, and even though because he returned to training before Van der Ven and Solanke, so he had more fitness in the tank as well. But he and Van der Ven just remained there on the bench, and I know you could argue that Spurs needed attacking reinforcements last night rather than defensive ones, but for me, and I think I've spoken about this before, there's a stat that shows that the most key passes played through to the attack in the Premier League in this little section of the pitch. I can't remember if it was the start of the season or last season, but it was Romero. Romero, not only is he aggressive in his defensive play, but he looks to get that ball as quickly between the lines as possible. And I do think Spurs have missed that a lot. It is quite a key element to his thing, but his wheelhouse. But yeah, but he didn't come on. He spent long periods kind of standing in the dugout, shouting kind of encouragement, looking a bit nervous at times as well. And look, Postecoglou did explain the reasoning, to be fair, on Friday today, why he didn't come on and why Van der Ven didn't come on. So I've got it here, the quote. And he said, yeah, they're a chance for Sunday. But when I saw the pitch before, as in the night before on Wednesday, I made up my mind that I wasn't going to risk them. It wasn't a great pitch and it wasn't steady underfoot. It wasn't the sort of game I thought I needed to expose them. A couple of extra days training and recovery, and hopefully both are in line to feature. And I get it. And look, I know I just kind of whinged in a way about him not being on the pitch. I get it. Can you imagine if he had played and got injured, or Van der Ven had played and got injured? The hoopla around that would have been huge. To come back again, put straight in and got re-injured. I get it. And yes, I absolutely understand that the team out there on the day should have done it enough. But I just still feel... I mean, I was almost going to say it's credit to Postecoglou in a way that he kind of thought about them rather than himself in that moment, because you could quite easily, as a manager, just think, stuff this, I need him on the pitch, get him on there. And he didn't. But they did need him on there. Big time. He's also asked about Ben Davies today and whether he'll be fit for Sunday. He said, we're not really sure. He's training at the moment, so we'll see how he feels. He's definitely progressed and he feels good, so let's see how he goes the next 24 to 48 hours. He's a chance, but we'll see how he goes. So in terms of other changes that could have been made sooner, I do feel for Dane Scarlett right now. He's the only natural centre forward they've got fit right now. But he only came on the pitch right at the end because of Solanke's injury. And even then, there were little moments where just his movement were giving Arzed a few more problems. And his movement was kind of allowing a little bit more space for Odobert, who, I think it was a header late in the game that he put over. And not even just Dane Scarlett, Mikey Moore. Mikey Moore in the last game against Arzed was the scourge of their defence. He was so good running them ragged down that left-hand side that you remember Maddison said it was like he was playing behind Neymar. So surely he's got it in his head more that, okay, I can give them problems. I'll be confident. I know what to do against this team. Likewise, RZ, their defenders are probably thinking, oh no, it's that 17-year-old that absolutely tore us apart last time in the second half. Use him. Oh, that was a frustrating one for me as well. There was one moment where it looked like he was going to come on and we were kind of preparing to write that, put that in our live blogs, whatever. And he didn't. He just never came on. I don't know if there was any more to that, but just I don't know. I just felt there were ways that the game just had to be changed sooner than it was. And especially when you're at a time when you finally can make changes, make them. Just make them. And look, I'm not the man in the dugout, and there may be other reasons behind it, and he might have thought they were getting joy in certain positions. But so many players underperformed. They really did. Brennan Johnson didn't have a great game. He got a bit better as the game wore on, but one of those where he didn't really offer too much. But then I can understand if you're going to leave someone on that you think might grab you a late goal because he is their top scorer, then I get it. But yeah, I don't know. It is bewildering, isn't it, at times? Trying to just keep up with the world of Tottenham Hotspur. Sorry, I'm just thinking I'm about to sneeze. I'm trying to stop it. Got that funny look on my face. That's not my natural look. It was just such a poor night for Spurs and for Postecoglou. Even the goal that sums up the team, that separates the team, sums up exactly the game, really. So Johnson, as I just spoke about, just kind of looked like he stopped tracking Parrot. Parrot prods the ball kind of not particularly dangerously across it, like just outside the 6-yard box, I think it was. Bergvall just makes a mess of trying to clear it, slices it up over his head, and I still felt, I could be wrong, but I felt that there was a chance still for Vicario in a normal circumstance could have maybe got a hand to it still, but Jed Spence was there kind of blocking his path, and Vicario probably thought, okay, well, you're close to it, you can get it, but Spence wasn't quite there enough to get his head to it. It was just a calamity of errors. And it was, but it could have been worse. Vicario made a 1v1 save from Parrot, which was a really good save. He made a couple of saves during this weird scramble in the box where he was... Sorry, I'm getting all snotty now. Do you ever get that? When you really should sneeze? And whether you sneeze or not, you still get a little bit snotty. I don't know why we're going there. I just want to talk about snot more than Tottenham Hotspur right now. I don't. Where was I going? Vicario, it was a strange kind of moment where he kind of fell to the floor and everyone around him was just watching the ball. I suppose we're very lucky it didn't get put back past him into the net. He only save I can remember him making in the second half was from Ernest Poku, which was quite like a low down save, which was quite good. But if you're only kind of being tested once, that suggests, okay, the visiting team must have loads of the ball and must be causing all kind of problems at the other end. Nope. No problems here. Oh, it's just... Honestly, I can say this, I think. My daughter is sending a job application letter off for something that she's, with her very creative mind, is trying to get a job in. I had time during the second half to read through a long letter to kind of check it for her and almost sub-edit it because nothing was happening on the pitch. I'm not saying I was like reading it for half an hour or anything. We're only talking about a couple of minutes, but still to have the ability to kind of look across at something else that's come in and read it, it just said everything to me about what was going on the pitch. Spurs had 7 shots in all, and like I said, only the one that was on target. Most of these wild efforts that went well wide, the one that was on target, like I said, probably wasn't even a shot. Just what was infuriating as well is that RZ have had quite a packed schedule, probably since their winter break, since they came back. They've been mostly playing like Sunday, Thursday or Sunday, Wednesday games throughout since now. I think they had one clear midweek since the winter break. And even Troy Parrott was being asked questions by the Dutch journalist ahead of the game about, how are you recovering? And he was talking about using a cryo chamber and all this sort of stuff. And you're kind of thinking, okay, Spurs will be a bit, stronger, fresher in the second half. And maybe that was why RZ didn't have many chances in the second half. Just didn't use it. Didn't use any of the initiative and advantage they should have had. Spurs, if anything, looked like the tired team. Postecoglou said afterwards, I don't think it's a matter of effort or attitude. I don't think it's going out there and not trying. But like I said, we really don't come to grips and have the right mindset to tackle an away fixture in Europe. It's always tough, and we obviously consider the goal, which was a disappointing set of events. But even after that, we didn't really settle down into the game at all. You're going to face some pressure when you play away from home in Europe and weather the storm and get to grips with it. But we never really did so, and that was a disappointment. Sonny said in his interview, we should be lucky we have another chance next Thursday. It's a big, big wake-up call and everybody should take real care about it. Every opponent you play, you have to respect massively because it's a hard competition and everyone wants to win. Everyone can talk about who is favourite, but at the end of the day, who wins is the most important thing. We have to respect the others, give huge respect to win the game because winning a game is never guaranteed. We have to earn it and can't make it comfortable. In the game, we have to make more. We have to make some uncomfortable stuff. There was a lot of uncomfortable stuff going on last night for Spurs. And to be fair to Sonny, while criticising everyone saying they were poor, he kept including himself. He said me as well, me included. And he was poor. It was a night that he will not have been happy with. Like I said, Maddison as well, Bentancur, and a few of the other players as well. Johnson will have wanted to make more of an impact. Odebear will have wanted to make more of an impact. Who else? Doggy didn't look great. Doggy looked a little bit like he was playing catch up at times. And like I said, Danso wasn't his greatest night. Am I forgetting anyone? I don't think so from the outfield team. I said the rest were kind of okay. But the wake up calls, the things you talk about, they're going unheard by Spurs' dozing players. It was not a performance to put in at that time when all of the reasons for poor performances have gone. Not good at all. Bournemouth come Sunday. Bournemouth have, after Spurs having an 8-day break, that's exactly what Bournemouth are going to come into this game with, and they've got a high-intensity brand of football as well. Spurs are going to have to deal with it. I do think he'll probably have to make a lot of changes to try to keep the energy levels high. I would think you'd probably bring Basuma and Sarr into the midfield. I wonder if Sonny can make 2 games in 3 days or so. Whether you play Odebear, hopefully Solanke, maybe even Tell on the right wing, and to give it, because he only played 45 minutes. Maybe see what he's like alongside Solanke. Central defence, please, Romero and Van de Ven. I think it's time. I think it is. I mean, there's one line of thinking where you could maybe play not quite a half each, but maybe Romero gets 60 minutes because he's had more training alongside Danso, and then Van de Ven replaces Romero for the last half hour, and that prepares them both for the Thursday night, maybe. I would probably play Spence with Porro as the fullbacks because Porro will be rested. And then that kind of get Maddison in the midfield, give Bergvall a rest because he did get a big whack. And I think then you're probably freshening up the team enough. And again, that's a team that should at home be trying to do something. I'm not saying they will, but they should be. And then comes that second leg on Thursday night against RZ. And RZ have already shown they can manage Spurs pretty well. They've only conceded once in the 2 games they've played against them this season, and that one only was the only kind of one at home as well for Spurs. Postecoglou was asked about that, like, how do you feel you're going to break them down with those struggles in the last 2 games? And he said, I don't have any doubt about our ability to break them down, but obviously we have to play a little bit differently to how we did tonight, not just with the ball, but without the ball too. We've got to be a lot more aggressive than we were. We were just lacking a bit of aggression in everything we did. We're a little bit hesitant with the ball, hesitant in our pressing, and we can't be that way. If we address those things, I'm sure we'll be in a position to at least cause them more problems than we did tonight. It's only 1-0, so I guess that's a positive, in that we didn't let the game get away from us. And that was the last line of the press conference. It wasn't the most inspiring line to end the press conference. I guess that's a positive. Ooh. Yeah. And it was a weird end to the press conference because this press conference was only 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And that, again, I think this was like at Forest as well. This wasn't on him. It was almost like the reporter. I asked 3 at the start, and I was kind of then left it for everyone else because there's quite a few journalists. There's a good 5 or 6 travellers and journalists in there. Full complement of Dutch journalists in there as well. And it just kind of, the questions like went, and it just stopped. And I think it's because, especially the English journalists, we've seen it all before. It's just another game in Europe that we've seen. You kind of, the questions I asked, why are they not up for such a big game? Why is this team not being able to penetrate defence despite, that being the thing that Spurs are supposed to be good at, scoring goals. There's not too much deep we can go into. Obviously, asked about Solanke. Romero stuff and Van der Ven was kind of covered as well today. It's kind of, do feel like you're just going in a circle of asking repetitive questions, then we're going to get moaned at by people for asking repetitive questions. Like I said, it's become too commonplace, that performance for Spurs in Europe, away from home, and occasionally in the Premier League as well, especially, the most disappointing ones around the injury issues. As I said, I think at the top of this, Postecoglou football is all about attacking movement, bravery and goals. And as with any system, I guess, if you take that bravery and attacking movement out of it, it sucks to watch. It's dreadful to watch. And I think Postecoglou will have lost more of kind of his remaining supporters on Thursday night. Because like I said, there's only kind of, if the challenges and issues that are there before are not there and they're putting in performances like that, of course, it's absolutely understandable. The doubts are going to rise even more. His critics will say this was another game where his team was too easy to set up against and the teams knew how to counter it. It is. I think this has been said a few times, but it's true. It's almost like the Postecoglou system needs to have almost all 11 players absolutely on song for it to work. And if they're not all on song, that's song, not son, then it just splutters. And that's a lot for a system to take. It has to have everyone out there by full throttle. But there shouldn't be an excuse. They should all be doing that as well after 8 days to rest, recharge, and be tactically ready. And it does feel for me a little bit like we're in last chance saloon now. You've got a hell of a week to come for Postecoglou and the team. 8 days, 3 games, Bournemouth at home, AZ at home, Fulham away, and then, you get through that, things turn a little bit. Don't get through that, and it kind of feels like it's game over for not only the season, but probably for Postecoglou. I genuinely can see that if the season is over and there's nothing to play for, then it's very difficult, I think, just to kind of keep any kind of change or momentum going in the season. My kind of feeling with Postecoglou, or my fear, and I said this at the that Supporters Trust Q&A that we did for charity a couple of weeks back, my fear is that he may end up as a bit of a Martin Jol figure with Tottenham. Both finished 5th, both laid a lot of groundwork with young players within the club that probably other managers benefited from, and both of them never saw it through. With Martin Jol, I think probably he's got more affection from the fans as well, Martin did, overall. And especially the way it ended was just a horrendous mess from the club. Ironically, after a Europa League game, I think, wasn't it? Was it Europa League? I think it was. Was it? I'm trying to think. It wasn't called the UEFA. Yeah, I think it was Europa League. A European game, anyway. Getafe, wasn't it? 2-1 defeat. Although I think it was always going to happen. The wheels were in motion long before that. But, later on, Pochettino credited all the way back to Martin Jol for what he achieved. He said that was when it started. It started with him. And I kind of wonder whether, almost like Postecoglou is going to have to go through all the pain and the suffering so that other managers in the future can benefit from the kind of foundations that he started to put in there. But look, he hasn't achieved enough, and he hasn't done enough in the league. And the league position is dreadful. 18 defeats in a season is dreadful. There's been, of course, the middle chunk of it, reasons for that, but around that, it's not been good enough, and he knows that. He's not daft. He's been in the coaching for 26 years, I think it is. He's well aware it's not been good enough, and I think it just comes down to really these 8 days or so, and what comes next, really. It's Tottenham Hotspur. Honestly, they absolutely do our brains in, don't they? They really do. I still just keep going back to the faces of the people getting on the plane earlier, just like shell shocked. It's like kind of this "we've been here before" face, but still doesn't make it any less painful. It really doesn't. So yeah, that's it. That's Spurs. We'll do another one of these Monday, I think, after Sunday's game. Hopefully, something more positive to talk about. For those interested in my marathon training, a little bit of an incident on Tuesday before I flew out the next morning to the Netherlands. I got bitten by a dog. I did. I was about 10 miles into an 18-mile run. I went past this, let's just say, area. And as I was running along, this area, sometimes dogs kind of seem to run out from it. And there's no owners in sight. They managed to get out from under fences or whatever. And these two little dogs ran over barking away. And I just thought, oh, okay, they're just going to bark and all of that. And I slowed down a bit and just kind of as they came over. And then one of them, they were really scruffy, muddy, not very well looked after dogs, I don't think. One of them turned its head and went, "Ah," and I'm like, no! It's like a scene from Jaws as Jaws comes out of the water. If Jaws was a very small, muddy, scruffy looking dirty dog. And he clamped his jaws on the side of my, kind of just above my ankle on the side of my left leg. And I had this weird situation like you see in the cartoons where this dog was attached to my leg. And I'm like kind of swinging my leg trying to get it off. I don't want to kick the little thing, or it's the other one that is looking like it's going to go for me as well. Eventually managed to kind of swing it across and it went off. And I'm like shouting, like, no, don't do that. And then so I started to continue my jog and I'm realising they're behind me. They're running on my heels. So 10 miles into an 18-mile run, it's no time to want to sprint. It really isn't. Anyone that does these longer runs, your body is struggling. And I had to sprint. And it was like, you know, the scene in Jurassic Park when he looks in the rearview mirror, the T-Rex coming behind them. I'm looking in the complete opposite size-wise. These two little dogs right on my heels. And I'm like, no. I had to run a good probably 150, 200 metres before the two little things just went, okay, you can go. And then I got back home, looked at I had to wear running leggings because it was a bit of a chilly one. And I looked down and the running leggings had these two little holes in it, like a vampire had bitten into my leg. Pulled it up and I had a semicircular kind of lower jaw bite kind of thing all along with blood down my leg. So I had to, it was one of those where I just knew the dog. If it was like someone's dog that I knew, I'd still be a little bit wary. But especially with this dog in the way it had clearly been kept, I was like, I've got to go and get shots and all that sort of stuff. As in, not shot the dog. I've got to go and get shots at the hospital and things like that. So yeah, I had to kind of race down to this minor injury thing because I knew like I'm going away for 3 days to the Netherlands. What if this leg kind of like something gets infected in it or something? So yeah, I had to go and I got antibiotics. Again, this was not, I demand this. I banged my fist on the counter. They looked at it first, the nurse, and said, you have to have this. Because it wasn't very pleasant looking. I had to have antibiotics, a triple injection thing for the tetanus, which is the main one for a dog bite, polio and diphtheria as well. So I'm wandering around Amsterdam for the last couple of days, really sore arm. Anyone that's had that jab, I think, my record showed I hadn't had that jab since I was 4, which I can't believe is true. I'm sure I had one at school at some point. So yeah, if you saw me walking around going like this with an aching arm and my leg kind of slightly limping because I had this dressing on it, which they kind of whacked on across. I'm a man with hairy legs. And that was one of the more painful things of this week was taking the dressing off and replacing it. But anyway, regardless of things like that, yeah, it wasn't great. So I'm going through the pain quite literally to try and raise money for charity. I don't know whether I've said this. I've just realised. I don't know if I've thanked whoever the anonymous donator. Someone did a donation for, I want to get this exactly right because it comes up as an anonymous donation, but I get an email that says how much has been donated. Even though it doesn't say it on the page. Someone donated £1,700 I think it was. You don't know whether it's American, Australian, or whatever country it is, but it certainly has whacked up my total, which currently stands at 22,428 for cancer research, which is just incredible. So, hey, I can take a dog bite as I run. That's fine. It's all for charity, man. It's all for charity. But yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone. 1,073 different people have donated. That is incredible. But yeah, that's my biggest donation so far. We had $1,000 one a few months back, or a couple of months back, and now a $1,700 one, which is amazing. But everything, honestly, everyone, like people doing like £5, £10, whatever anyone's doing, it's so appreciated. Every single one just keeps topping up, and it all going to such a great cause as well. So yeah, it's nicer to speak about something more pleasant. I don't know if it's pleasant me having a dog bite, but hey, might have been humorous for some people rather than talking about the depressing nature of Tottenham Hotspur. So yeah, press conference there was today. There's little bits from the press conference going out tonight. There is a player interview coming out on Saturday night. Keep an eye out for all of those. And yeah, and then the game on Sunday, which looks to be some train issues as well, so beware of those when you're trying to get to the ground. I think the club tweeted them out, so keep an eye on those. But right, time to head off. I want to forget about Spurs for tonight. I'm going to try and forget about them tomorrow. I've got to do a little shorter run in the morning, a 10k. Interesting to see how my leg likes that. I'm definitely not running in the same route ever again that I did. I just don't want to run away from little dogs anymore. Yeah. So that's that. Let's all do that. Let's all have a Saturday off, Tottenham Hotspur. I think we deserve it. Yeah, time to go. Time to go. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.